All right, we're started now. Hi, Chloe. How's it going?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. I can't complain. It's been a good day at work. Got a lot done. Back on the grind. I love Mondays. So, how about you?
I'm working on the writing mostly today, and then I have a couple of projects for my podcast actually.
Oh, very nice. So, what is your podcast about?
So I started a media brand about a year ago, and we started out interviewing people on podcasts, like exploring different artists and their personal stories with how they got into what they're doing. Um, and then we switched and we did a different form of interview, and now we're doing like workshop focused podcasts. So actually teaching people how to be successful in pursuing their passions.
Okay. So, how long ago did you start that? You said
Almost a year.
almost a year. How many? How often do you guys put episodes out?
We were doing weekly episodes, and then we took about a 2-month break when I started Praxis. And
Okay.
now that I'm kind of in the swing of things, we're going to start back up again.
Very nice. Yeah, I think podcasting is a lot of fun. I always wanted to have one, and I never really had a topic to talk about specifically. So when Praxis came along, I was like, well, I guess I could just talk about Praxis stuff. So I figured it was a good start, good practice. What do you use for a hosting service?
We actually only upload to YouTube right now. We got a
Oh, okay.
distributing service and we tried to get our podcast out on like Spotify and stuff, but turned out that they didn't inform us beforehand that they don't upload podcasts. They only do music. So we're working on
Oh,
finding
okay.
a podcast distributing service.
Yeah, see, the thing is, I use SoundCloud and it works, but I can tell it's made for music because like they don't even like they have genres and stuff like that. It's like there's no podcast genre. I know people use SoundCloud for podcasts, but it's not created for it. You can tell. So, but it's actually really easy to embed to your website though because you just go click the share, click embed, and put it in your website. So that part about it is easy.
Yeah.
So basically, I guess I wanted to start with kind of how did you find Praxis and kind of what's your story about getting to Praxis? Everybody has their own story, and I feel like yours is pretty interesting.
About Praxis, initially 3 years ago. I heard about it through like HSLDA and a couple of the camps I did through homeschooling. And my mom really wanted me to do it, but I really wanted to go to college. So I completely ignored it and I just went and applied to schools and I got accepted to everything I applied to. So I was really confident going into college. And when I got there, it was a lot easier than I expected. I didn't actually feel challenged to do anything that I felt mattered to me. It was a lot of like writing to please someone versus actually creating value of any kind. And I'm the kind of person who can put something in short term memory and then forget it immediately after as soon as it's done being useful. So in school, I found that like right after I finished a test, I completely like flushed out all of the knowledge from the courses I had taken. And I was
Mm-hmm.
worried that at the end of school, I wasn't going to be qualified for a job in any of the fields I was interested in for my degree. So I decided to explore Praxis a little bit more and see if that was something I was more interested now that I had actually experienced college and how that was for me. And I decided to leave and try it out just because it felt pretty low risk to me. Like, you don't lose money doing Praxis. Didn't
Mm-hmm.
I would need to take out any loans, and worst case scenario, I spent a year doing it and walked away with some professional coaching and went back to
Mm-hmm.
college.
Yeah. What did you uh as far as the people like around you in college, what did you feel like their disposition towards college and towards the whole idea was? Was it more of a we're here because we kind of have to be, or we're here because we really have a goal? I mean, because obviously it seemed to you that you had a clear understanding of I'm going here to learn how to be valuable to somebody, to some company someday, and it seems like you had a quick realization that that was not happening.
Yeah. Well, from my experiences, like I said, I was homeschooled, so I didn't know where my peers were at in terms of like direction.
Hmm.
I didn't have a lot to compare to, but the kids that I did know were really academic homeschoolers. So in high school, I thought everybody's going to be like this. Everybody's going to be really motivated. They're going to know what they want to do, and they're going to be doing it. And then I got to college, and I maybe knew two people who were sure about their major and actually felt like their work, like in classes, was preparing them for it. And everybody else I knew, they were there at college to find themselves, or they were there at college because their friends went, or I knew a girl who was at college so that she could be located near Hollywood so she could do auditions for acting. And it seemed like a lot of people were just spending $40,000 a year to be in that area or around their friends, and it wasn't the environment I wanted.
Yeah, I can't specifically relate because I never attended. I mean, I grew up with a family that was super anti-college, right? I mean, my dad never said you can't go to college, but he definitely always was like, oh yeah, college is a scam, blah blah blah. So like I never was really disposed to go there. However, for a while I did consider going to a tech school in Wausau here, but I was going to go for architecture just so I had some kind of knowledge so I could get a job somewhere and then eventually build my own start my own construction company. That was my goal for a while. But as soon as I moved to Wausau, because I had a few jobs lined up, I ended up doing a bunch of other things, got into insurance before you knew it, and I was like, oh boy, I mean, I make really good money right now. I don't need to go to the tech school because I literally make more than almost any one of their graduates their first year. So I was like, well, I'm just gonna stick with this. um, as far as Praxis is concerned, though, I had heard about Praxis. I think I think it was last summer, not this year, but obviously in 2018, because one of my friends, his dad's cousin is married to Isaac Morehouse. So he had heard about it through whatever because they knew they've met him and stuff. And he had applied to it. He didn't get accepted. But to me, it sounded like the way he portrayed it was like a coding boot camp, and I was like, "That's okay. That's not something I want to do." So when they brought it up to me, they were like, because I was kind of like looking around, and I was kind of dissatisfied with doing insurance, and I said, I don't really want to do this, and they said, "Hey, you should look into it." So I was like, "Okay." Well, so I went to the website, did the application, and once I got accepted, I was like, I don't know. Like it was really hard for me to accept the idea of doing something like that and not making any money for a while because I had been making good money. So it was really hard for me to do it. And ultimately, I think it was Amanda Kingsmith who was my advisor through that application process. I said, you know what? If I do it, I'll do the education only version and I'll do it this fall. So I'll touch base with you later. So I kind of had put it off. And then ultimately, I ended up in May quitting my job as an insurance salesman. And then I was like, now I got lots of options. So I weighed them all, and I had asked some really good advice of a very successful person in Wasa here. And he said, do the things that you would regret not doing because you're young. If you don't plan to go to college, make your life experience your college. So I said I took my 8 options eventually down to 4 and then down to 3 and then down to 2 and I said, you know what? I'm gonna do Praxis. So I applied again or I just, contacted them and said, hey, am I still good to go? And they said, sure. So yeah, I'm loving it so far. I think it's pretty great.
What did you think of the application process?
So to be honest, it's really hard for me to remember that far back. I really enjoyed I think the reason I was excited about the application process was because they talk so much about understanding yourself, like what is your goal? And I remember writing this: if you had as much resources as you wanted and you could do anything, what would you do and how would you execute it? I remember writing that essay or whatever it was. I don't know what you want to call it. And I did. I felt extremely confident applying to it because after hearing this stuff, I was like, well, I've done insurance for a year and a half, so like I feel like they would be really happy to have me. And I mean, I was kind of arrogant about it, but I enjoyed it. I did like the idea that they kind of encouraged you to go onto Medium and start writing on get a Medium account, and that was really big deal for me because for a while I was writing on Medium, not very regularly, but it was really awesome because I was able to just get my thoughts kind of out there to the world, and I really enjoyed that much about it. But I thought the application process was interesting. That's what I'd say because I've never applied to a college or anything like that. So like you have to understand that for me, applications is like I don't know what to expect. I kind of never really had to apply anywhere, even for jobs. Um, when I got my insurance job, I basically had it in the bag. I just had to get approved by the people up top. Um, they were slightly cautious about hiring me because I was so young. I was 18, but my boss was my godfather, and he said, you know, I want you to work for us, and it's basically it comes down to my decision. So I never really had applications, so yeah. I don't know if that answers your question well.
Yeah, and pretty much. I've heard a couple people who, like I know some of the people in our cohort applied more than once, and I know that that's something they encourage people to do if you don't make it the first time. But I don't know. I was kind of curious about that. Like,
What did you What did you think about it? I mean, especially having applied to multiple colleges, etc. beforehand. What did you think about the process?
it was actually the first thing I applied to that I was nervous about because I don't take this wrong way. I also tend to be a little bit arrogant about some things sometimes, like kind of like what you were saying. And I'd never been not accepted to something I applied for, and I've applied
Hmm.
for. I got into every college I applied to. I actually got scholarships that I didn't apply for, and so it was nerve wracking for me to apply. But when I got in, I felt like a little bit confused because I knew that there were some people, quite a lot of people, who don't get in the first time and then reapply. And I don't know from the application process what changes about an applicant that would then make them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it has to do with some of the questions they ask you because it's kind of like, I mean, just as young people, not a lot of young people ask themselves really hard questions, you know, and I think that going through it and getting rejected and then they reapply. So first of all, the fact that they reapply shows a certain level of resilience. So you know they're not going to get beaten down. They're going to try again. And I also think that it changes their mindset a slight bit to go through the application process. They might go through it without changing their mindset during it, and then they get rejected. But then once they've gone through it, their mindset's kind of changed. So they end up having a different mindset the next time they apply. You know what I mean? I think that would be my best guess.
Yeah, and that makes sense.
So once you got accepted, what did you think? Were you like, okay, I'm gonna do this right away, or did you think about it a lot?
I actually, so during like my senior year of high school, I moved from like a community that I was really integrated into to literally the middle of nowhere.
Hmm.
And there's not a lot of opportunities for community here. So I kind of noticed myself get really introverted when I moved. And so when I was making the decision to leave college, the thing that actually gave me the courage to do that was a really good friend of mine decided to leave too. And we both applied to Praxis and we both were accepted. And then they changed their mind and decided not to do it. And when they did that, I stopped and I was like, am I sure that I want to do this even if they're not
Hmm.
going to? Because
Yeah.
I was like, I waited until the day I had to pay the deposit to make the decision. And um, I'm glad now and I'm sure now that it's what I wanted to do. But at the time, it was like, I wasn't 100% certain. But I'm very much the kind of person who's um, like you hear a lot of stories about God parting the Red Sea for people to walk through, and I believe in the importance of also having faith to step out before the path is clear. So it was like a moment of testing that for me. So
Hmm.
I'm really glad that I did, but I definitely wasn't 100% certain when I
Yeah.
actually went through and did it.
I think For me, I was pretty certain I wanted to do it when I got when I was going through that second application process, essentially like that second round of it. And then I got all those documents, and I was like really careful to read through them all and everything, which I normally am never. I almost never. I mean, I bought a house or a property with a friend of mine, an investment property, and I didn't even look at the paperwork. I was just like, yep, it's good. You know, I trust the banker because he's a good friend of mine. But Praxis, I actually looked through, and there's a little bit of hesitancy because you're like, okay, well, if I do this, then I'm really in this. I gotta make sure I fulfill my commitments. And I think the biggest fear for me was that I just didn't know what was like. I didn't know much about Praxis. I was like, okay, so you go through 6 months, and then you go for a startup, and then 6 months, and then you maybe get a job. I mean, so I was like, it's kind of weird. They don't really lay it out, but I mean, obviously, I understand they only can lay out so much. Otherwise, people would steal their information. So I don't know. But once I did it, I said, okay, I'm going to be committed to this. Just like when I started my insurance job, I said, I'm going to be committed to this. But I guess I would ask, what do you think so far of the program? Do you think that it's, I guess I won't ask, any other questions that lead your thought process. Just what do you think of the program so far?
Overall, I've gotten pretty close to what I expected to out of the program. The details have looked a little bit different. Like I wasn't sure what the coaching would be like exactly, and I definitely didn't expect a couple of the curriculum changes that have happened.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been like, I guess, something that comes with just the stage that Praxis is at right now, where they're still improving their curriculum. So it was weird for me. The weirdest part has been going into module 2 thinking I was going to be doing a portfolio project, and then it really being the whole course on building a second brain. Um, but even then, that's the moment where I was like, am I really satisfied with Praxis? Was through module 2, and even in the moment, like through module 2, I was a little bit like feeling like building a second brain wasn't really for me. Like I didn't like the organization that they were having us go through and everything. But now I find myself using it a lot more than I expected. So
I think for me, what was interesting, and you mentioned this, that they're in a certain stage right now, practices. I think it's interesting. I mean, I'm a really philosophical person. I feel like you know that from my blog posts. We're basically being educated in a startup. So we're being educated how to work for a startup in a startup, because like Praxis is what, 5 years old, 6 years old? I mean, it's not that old, right?
yeah, it's not that old. I think
So
2013 it started.
yeah, it's pretty new, relatively new. And it's a constantly changing thing because they know they have that agility, that agile mindset where it's like you go through, you fix something, and then you adjust it and you keep redoing it, and you make adjustments along the way. Just like any startup, like if any of us go and actually work for a startup, it's going to be a really similar mindset. So I think that was interesting. To me, I also thought was interesting is that they pretty much, for the most part, they all have this mindset that, I should say they is the advisors. They all have this mindset that obviously praxis is going to be different for different people. Like they understand that this size does not fit all. So like I really liked when TK came to me because I don't know if you remember, but I had said something about how this was so easy so far. And he said, oh, I hear somebody challenging, and then I had an advisory meeting with him, I think the next day or the day after. And he said, if this is not hard enough, like we can make it harder. And I was like, okay, well, I'll accept your challenges, whatever you want to give to me. But I guess, it just was a cool moment for me to realize, ooh, don't shoot your mouth off so quick. Because for me, I meant that the work wasn't hard. I didn't mean that praxis fitting into your life wasn't hard because the time commitments, but I meant like, okay, I interview somebody, I post a blog post about it, and I write about how to be blah, 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 and then how to be successful at it. So to me, that wasn't hard at all. It was just a matter of doing it. You know what I mean? So I guess that was slightly disappointing that I'm never disappointed when I have, less work. But it was kind of disappointing because I was like, well, this is just the same old, same old. The part that was hard, obviously, was the building a second brain. I still use it, but I don't think I use it to the degree most people probably do. I mean, I use the Project Minesweep daily. I take notes a lot still, but I don't go back through them as often. So I don't know about you.
Yeah, it's similar for me. I mostly use it for my ideas or notes I have on projects that I'm doing. And
Yeah. Do you use the workflow canvas at all?
no,
I never understood it when we did it. I mean, like I can see the importance of it, but at the same time, to me it's a hassle because it's kind of like putting I don't know, putting borders on how much you can work because it's like you have to make sure you hit this side and then this side and then that side and that side, right? So
hmm
I don't use it still. That's kind of why I made it a Google Doc because I figured I wouldn't use it too much, but um overall I still like it. I think that I was pretty patient with it because I felt special that we were the ones who were testing it out and our feedback probably meant a lot to them.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And that's kind of why I like doing these podcasts. I did one with JD last weekend, and we're doing this one so that maybe the advisors will see this and be like, oh, good points there, or maybe they'll just say, those damn kids. um, no, but so let's see. What did you think about, or what do you think so far about this writing module?
I really like it so far. I think I'm gonna try and keep it going after the month is over because I've definitely been the kind of person it's not that I have a fear of writing or something. It's just like, if nobody's going to read it, what's the point in sharing it type of thing. So for a long time, like, it was the same thing when I was starting podcasting in the YouTube channel. I had wanted to do that for like 10 years, but I was like, if I'm the only one going to watch the videos, then I'm not going to publish them. I'm just going to record them and watch them. But I, I almost think there's a pride in publishing them, even if nobody reads them. I don't know if that sounds weird, but um, I read a book that changed my perspective on it, and I actually can't believe I'm forgetting the name right now. It's like one of those like romanticized a Knight's Tale type of stories about kind of like Monty Python type of thing, where even though it's completely ridiculous, they're doing what they enjoy and want to be doing just to do it. And so it's kind of like, why not? Why not publish it if I'm gonna write anyway? The chance that somebody
Yeah.
might see it.
Yeah, I actually just wrote about that today, kind of the power of writing. I don't know if you read mine or not, but it was basically saying that what if your perspective is needed, right? Because there's so many people that write out there. There's so many people that are better than me. Like I am not that good of a writer. I know that much. I might have a good perspective, but for me to be able to put it on words, like, and make it interesting enough that people are going to stick with every word, I'm not very good at that. I don't think I am. So I guess my point and thing was, you never know when what you're writing can help you. I mean, as a Christian, I believe that the Holy Ghost inspires us a lot, and we help people. And you never know when your one blog post might get read by one person that might change their whole life. You know what I mean? And I think that I'm sure. Have you heard of Gary Vee? Oh, you haven't? Oh,
Mm-mm.
wow. So Gary Vaynerchuk is like this guy who's his whole mantra is essentially like positivity and optimism because there's too much negativity in the world. In fact, this poster behind me that you can see, my sister made that. It's a whole bunch of Gary Vee quotes. Um, but I guess the more positive things we can put out into the world, the better the world should be because I think that typically positive and optimistic people, they don't tend to share as much information because they're pretty content. They're like, oh, I mean, why would I need to do that? Whereas negative people are searching for something, like they're missing something in their life, so therefore they go around and they spew all this bad energy, you know what I mean?
Mm.
So I really like that mindset, and I also just enjoy putting my thoughts out on paper. Like it helps me think, to be honest. Like it's kind of a selfish reason, but that's mainly the reason I write is because I just I get a chance to reason through, a situation or a topic and come to my conclusion of my thoughts on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And yeah, I definitely write for myself too, mostly. That's something I've noticed about, I think you can tell, like reading everybody else's blog posts every day too. It's like you can see different people are motivated by different things, or like I just write about a lot of things that aren't necessarily going to be useful to people. Like I'm
Hmm.
not exploring theories or philosophies most of the time, but just chasing those random lines of thought to the end. And I think there's value for me in that, and I really like doing it.
Yeah, one of the things I think some people, I wonder sometimes if their mindset is, oh, like why would I write something? Because what if it comes back to bite me in the future? Because somebody might go find it. I just say it this way, like especially as far as getting a job is concerned or getting clients, like if they go back and they do research on me in the future, right? If they're going to hire me or they want to do business with me, and they research and they find some of these old blog posts and they say, "Oh man, Silas, he's a whack job. He talks about God a bunch. I don't want to do business with him." Well, I'll be honest, I that's okay with me. Like I don't want to have to deal business with somebody who doesn't like me, because if they don't like me, then we're not going to get along. It's just going to be a stressful relationship. So I pretty much see it as a win-win. And plus, who knows? Maybe somebody will say, "Oh, wow, this kid's, they're writing, they're actually doing something." Like if they happen to find our blog post that says we wrote a blog post every day for you, whatever, however long of time, then that's just something that goes for us, right? I decided, I shut my mouth off again, that I'm going to write every day of my life, and except for like a couple weekends per year where I pretty much go away from social media. So, I mean, I made a big commitment, but it's just become part of my life.
Yeah.
Um, how, I'm trying to think of some other questions. Do you have any questions for me specifically?
Um, I was I didn't have this in advance. I'm thinking of it now. But something I noticed this weekend when I was thinking about it is that there's a lot of emphasis put on Praxis being for doers, like people who just are willing to do things. And I can see that in the curriculum and that kind of thing. But I also noticed that a lot of people have trouble with that in our cohort. And in general, I'm sure it's something that happens every month just because a lot of
Yeah.
people, commitment's not necessarily something a lot of people are naturally good at. And for me, it's dependent on what it is. But like, there's, I don't, I forget what question I was forming at the end of this, but do you feel like it's challenged you in that way, or do you feel like it's just that natural for you to just
To do?
do things? Yeah.
I actually do think it has challenged me because, I, while not afraid to try new things, did not, I mean, I had to build a website before this even started. I freaked out when I had heard that because I knew nothing about building a website. So I built my website on WordPress originally, and I was super unhappy with it. So I think I saw yours. I think that's where I got it from because I said, "Wow, you have a really nice website. Like I can see your creativity in your website." And I was like, "Where'd you build it?" And then you told me Squarespace. So that's when I switched over. And like I love Squarespace. Squarespace is super easy to use. So that was challenging. That because like nobody was telling me to build a website before then. So like I might have gotten around to it, but I wasn't probably going to get around to it for a while. And now I have this so much confidence, a lot more at least in the tech side of things, because like okay, I can build a website, and that was actually very helpful for me because now my job is building websites and selling our advertising services. And then this whole podcast thing. So like I said, if I didn't have, these people around me who are like doing lots of extra things, like it, I'll clarify something in a minute. But if I didn't have these people around me who are kind of like trying to really work hard to be out there in front, I don't think I would have. I mean, I don't think I would have started my podcast, at least for a while, because I wouldn't have felt challenged, right? But because I felt had all these people around me, there's part of me that's very arrogant that says, "Oh, I want to be the best," and I want to like, or I guess I shouldn't say it that way. It's more of I am the best, and now I'm just going to take action on it. I know it's really prideful, but it's just how I was raised, and I'm trying to work on it. It takes time, but the point is, I was like, "Oh, well, I might as well start my podcast. Like, why not?" Right? So one thing I wanted to talk about also was that somebody had mentioned to me, I think it was Jarrett. He had said that he heard, excuse me, he heard that a lot of Praxians in the past were like always like focused on, it's kind of like a battle among them, among the people in their module to be the best.
Hmm.
And I never came in with it with that expectation because, to be honest, I did hardly any research on what Praxis really was. I didn't talk to people about what was going on. I was like, okay, I'm doing this, so let's do it. Kind of. I can't. I'm in it, so what's the sense in doing research on it? But he had told me that, and I think I had heard it from one of the advisors at some point. I'm trying to remember. I believe I heard it. They said, "Oh man, this is like this module really gets along, and they do stuff together," and they were happy about that. So, but I mean, what can you expect? Like if you put a whole bunch of wolves in a in a room, like they're going to be trying to show who's the best wolf,
Yeah, I get what you're saying, because I am definitely at least motivated by competition, whether it's set up that way or not. It's just definitely the difference between trying to do all this kind of stuff on your own, which honestly, hypothetically, you could do a lot of what you do in Praxis on your own.
Mm-hmm.
But being in this situation with other people and you know that they're all doing it too, and you know that they have access to seeing what you produce, it's definitely like, I want to make mine better than theirs a little bit, like there is that
Yeah,
incentive or pressure or something.
yeah. There's a little bit of like, I want to kind of stand out, but like, it's just also because I did think about that because like there was a couple times I was thinking, like, why did I do this? Like, why did I sign up for Praxis? Like, literally everything I've done, I could have done on my own. But then I was like, well, did I though? I didn't do it on my own, obviously, and I had no intention of doing a lot of these things on my own. So they challenged me by giving me these deliverables to produce. And here's my, I always like to look ahead and think, okay, so what is this going to do? Right? We're going to go through this. We're going to do these things. But then, like, if it was school, you kind of lose contact with a lot of the people, and you go out and you probably lose that mindset of teaching yourself, right? But because we have the community, there's this constant connection with this is what I came from. I learned how to learn back then. And you're also helping other people up with you. And to me, that's very interesting because not only do I think that the community is super resourceful and like it's nice to be able to have people to bounce things off of, it's super awesome that we like think about how many people are who went through Praxis ahead of us are going to be the hiring managers in a couple years. You know what I mean? So it's very, very possible that we get easy connections, I guess you could say, into these companies because of our affiliation.
Yeah, definitely. One thing that I've been curious how different it is from like our cohort from other cohorts. There's just some like we have no knowledge of the people, what the group dynamics have been like before us. That's been like it was something that was subconsciously like curious about before, but then I have a friend who went through the program years ago, like or really early on in Praxis, and I didn't talk to her at all before I joined. I just knew she did it, and I was like, oh, she did it, so it must be good. But I never asked her. But recently she found out I was doing it, and she reached out to me, And she was saying that like everybody in her cohort was like super tight knit, that they used
For
to
real.
have weekend Zoom calls where they'd stay on the call for 48 hours. She said
Oh
that
my gosh.
she met her best friends from it and that people from her cohort were in her wedding. I was like, wow. And I look at ours, I'm like, that's very different. Like it's so interesting, and I wonder what it's like for the advisors to be with a completely different dynamic every single month. Like,
It probably makes it interesting, that's for sure. But also, I mean, how many of those advisors, how many years ago was that?
I think it was like 4 years ago.
So I mean, there might have been a lot of advisors that weren't there. You know, maybe they went through, but that is interesting. Like I do definitely like within our group, I feel a closer connection to some of them. Like JD and I do a lot of projects and we talk a lot. But like the rest of them, I mean, I talk to you a little bit, but I don't really talk to the rest of them a lot. So like it was kind of fun doing that one project we did, the forecast, and that was fun to organize. And I was kind of expecting more of that activity and more of that kind of like going forward so that we'd end up being closer. But I don't know. I mean, like I just didn't have the energy to do it at the end of last month because at the end of last month I was on pilgrimage. Like I was completely gone from the internet basically. And I didn't think of anything, you know, because I've just been
Yeah,
so busy focusing on work and trying to get things rolling there. So, but no, it is interesting.
yeah.
Um,
I feel like the
I
dynamics a little bit different. Like we're very split in our cohort between people who are like always getting things done ahead of time and more organized and everything, and people who are like always getting things done like 15 minutes to 3 hours after they're supposed to be done.
Yeah,
It's
I
like,
only delivered one thing late, and that was after they removed the rule, and that was because I had my case study done. Like I had what I thought was a rough draft, and I sent it to Lolita to for her to edit it because I was like, I'm gonna do this, or actually no, I shared it with the group. I said, can you guys like look through this, and then I'll post it on Monday. So it would have been like a couple days late, and it turns out that I pretty much used that exact thing. I just put very few edits into it, and I was like, oh, yeah, turned out pretty nice. So I don't really feel like I delivered it that late.
yeah,
um, but no, I do agree with you, and I think it's interesting. I mean, I'm actually this coming weekend, I'm gonna go visit a friend in Minneapolis, and I happened to talk to I can't remember her name. I can't remember her name. But anyways, there's this one girl on one of the Zoom calls who was like, "Oh, I saw you swing dance," and she sent it to me privately in the Zoom call on Monday, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I swing dance." So then we started talking on Twitter, and she's in Minneapolis, St. Paul, so I'm gonna go have coffee with her too when I go to visit my friend just to meet another Praxian. So um, I think it's also interesting just hearing the stories that people have because I talked to her and she said that she actually never got like I think it had been 6 to 9 months after she had finished the boot camp and she still hadn't gotten an apprenticeship. And she had already done 4 years of college also. And she was like, yeah, I'm just going to go get a job. Like she has no hard feelings about it. She's like, yeah, I'm just not going to wait around anymore. Like I'm going to get my own job. So she works at this company called Dispatch and she said it's awesome. So I just like hearing the stories.
yeah,
I also think it's interesting with what happened with Michelle, you know, how she's like, yeah, I just don't think this is quite right. So I talked to Cameron and after this next month, I'm going to move on to, um, to getting a job. Like that's what Praxis is. It's not everybody's going to have to fit in that same box, you know?
yeah,
So
yeah. Every time I've had something where I'm like, oh, am I really getting challenged enough or whatever? I'm like, oh, well, if I really felt that way, I could say something. And I'm like, I think I'm good.
one thing that when TK had told me, he said, here's what I'm going to have you do. Like, I'm going to challenge you to comment on every single deliverable. Like read through it, watch it, whatever it was, and give your like best positive, what's it called? Constructive criticism. And I did that for 2 days on a total of like 6 things. And I was like, this is exhausting. It was really interesting though, because I felt like I gained so much knowledge because not only was I consuming it, but I was trying to give advice on it. And he had told me, he said, if you do this, it's really going to help you because you're going to understand like everything more because you're giving advice and teaching rather than consuming. And it was really cool. So if you ever have the time, check it out. It worked a lot for me. But what do you know when we're going to be doing our portfolio project? Is it going to be next month?
Um, I'm not sure. I think it was either next month or the month after, sometime during placement.
Oh, okay. Because I feel like the portfolio project is pretty important. You know what I mean? Like that's one of the big things for your crash profile, isn't it?
Actually, I have mine's launched and I've gotten feedback on it and everything, and I don't have a portfolio project that's like directed at a certain role up there, but it's
What do you
different
what?
because I do have a portfolio already.
Yeah, because you have the podcast and the business, right?
Mhm.
So that's the thing I'm not too worried about because either way, I have my tea business in there. But I was really excited when we heard about when we heard the portfolio project was coming because I was like, oh great, you know, I can focus on Praxis, but at the same time I'll be focusing on building my tea business. And then we came got that one call and I was like, poop, we're not gonna do it. But I was under the impression that this current month was going to be our portfolio project because that's what I thought he had said. I thought TK said they're just moving it back a month, but um, no, I'm excited for it because I think it'll actually challenge me to. It already did challenge me to set goals. Like, okay, this is how many, like an actual number, which I normally don't do because I always believe in I will accomplish it eventually. I just don't like to feel like I failed because I have this tendency to get kind of depressed if I don't meet a goal. Because sometimes I set unrealistic goals, right? So I don't know. I do enjoy Praxis, and I think the main reason I enjoy it is because like-minded people, good challenge, and you spend a lot of time thinking about like what do you actually want? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So all right. So any closing thoughts that you have for it for this discussion about Praxis?
Just kind of along with you're saying, like it's very much of you have to think about what do I want to get out of this, and it's completely on you to do that.
Yeah, it is totally up to us. It's what we want out of it. I think that, you know, I would ask, can you put it um into the format that if you were telling somebody considering Praxis or coming into it after they've officially accepted it, what would your advice be to them so far?
Um, I'd say to have some sort of idea for yourself before you start the program, because you can apply in advance too. Like I'd say have an idea of what you're wanting to get out of it and then hold yourself to that because you don't want to be the person who's sitting there thinking, you know, oh, this isn't what I expected or something like that. Like have actual expectations and make sure the program meets them because that's your responsibility, you know?
Yeah, because the program is tailorable to what you want, basically. Yeah, that's what I would say too. Is I very much along the same lines. Is that when you go into Praxis, really remember that it's for you. Like this whole point of you going in is not for you to please somebody else. It's for you to build value for yourself that you can be happy with and that you can take to other people. So with that, I will say thank you so much, Chloe, for taking the time out of your day to go on this call. And once I get it all uploaded, I'll share it with you, and you can share with your friends. And hopefully, hopefully we can do this again sometime towards the end of the boot camp.
Yeah, no problem.
Have a
Thank you.
have a good one.
You too.